Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time in life when you begin to sense a shift. It may not always be obvious, but deep inside you feel that something is changing. You wake up one morning and what once satisfied you no longer does. The conversations that used to excite you now seem empty. The places where you found comfort start to feel unfamiliar. My friends, this is not a mistake. This is not a coincidence. This is preparation. When God is getting ready to do something great in your life, He does not send a notice in the mail. He does not put up a billboard with flashing lights. Instead, He disrupts your comfort. He stirs something within you. And for some, this process can be unsettling. You may start losing interest in things that once consumed your time. The people you used to walk with may start drifting away. Opportunities that once seemed certain begin to close. And in the natural, it may look like you are losing. But I want to tell you today that you are not losing, you are shifting. You are being positioned for something greater. One of the first signs that God is preparing you for something great is that He makes you uncomfortable where you are. The job that once brought you satisfaction suddenly feels like a prison. The relationships you held on to so dearly begin to feel like they are holding you back. This discomfort is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to move you, because if you never feel discomfort, you will never seek change. Some of you are fighting against the very thing God is using to push you forward. But let me tell you, when God is calling you to a higher place, He will not allow you to stay where you are. Another sign is divine disconnection. There are people in your life who are meant to be there for a season, but not forever. And when their season is over, God will remove them. It is not always because they are bad people, but because they cannot go where God is taking you. If you find yourself losing relationships, do not be discouraged. If doors that once opened so easily are now shutting, do not be afraid. God is pruning you, shaping you, and refining you for the next level. When God is preparing something great, He also increases your vision. Suddenly you start to see beyond where you are. You begin to dream bigger, think deeper, and desire more. You no longer settle for the ordinary because something in your spirit tells you that you were created for more. That is not your imagination, that is revelation. God is showing you glimpses of your future, calling you to rise above your present. But with every great preparation comes great resistance. Some of you may be facing battles that seem unbearable, challenges that appear impossible to overcome. But hear me today, opposition is a sign that you are on the right path. The enemy does not fight those who are going nowhere. He attacks those who are stepping into destiny. The storm you are facing is not proof that you are abandoned. It is proof that you are advancing. And in this season, you may feel alone. You may feel like you are in a wilderness, wandering without direction. But let me remind you, God does His best work in isolation. Before David became king, he was alone in the field, tending sheep. Before Joseph ruled in Egypt, he was thrown into a pit and left for dead. Before Jesus began His ministry, He was led into the wilderness. Do not despise your season of isolation, because in the quiet place, God is preparing you for the stage. So if you are feeling restless, if you are losing things and people, if you are facing resistance, do not be afraid. Rejoice, because these are the signs that God is shifting you, stretching you, and molding you for something greater. And when the time is right, what He has prepared for you will be revealed. Stay faithful, stay expectant, because what is coming is far greater than what was. Ladies and gentlemen, when God begins to prepare something great in your life, the process is rarely easy. It does not always make sense. It does not always come wrapped in comfort or predictability. But one thing is certain. When God is getting ready to elevate you, everything around you will start shifting. Some of you may be experiencing situations right now that seem unfair. You have been faithful. You have prayed. You have worked hard. Yet it feels like everything is being taken from you. People have turned their backs on you. Doors that once opened with ease are now locked. Opportunities that seemed secure have vanished. And in your heart, you wonder, God, what did I do wrong? But I want to tell you today, you did not do anything. You are simply in the middle of your preparation. The greater the calling, the greater the preparation. The greater the purpose, the greater the process. And what many do not realize is that before you step into something great, you must first be tested, refined, and stretched beyond what you thought you could endure. Because if you receive the blessing before you are prepared, you will not have the capacity to sustain it. Look at the life of Joseph. God gave him a dream of greatness at a young age, but he did not step into his destiny overnight. He had to endure betrayal. He had to face false accusations. He had to experience isolation in prison. And for years it looked as if he was moving further from the promise instead of closer to it. But what seemed like a setback was actually a setup. Every trial was shaping him. Every hardship was preparing him. Because when the time came for him to step into his destiny, he was not just ready, he was equipped. Some of you are in that process right now. And the challenge for many is that the preparation does not always look like the promise. God gives you a vision of greatness, but then he allows you to go through a season that looks nothing like what he showed you. You see yourself leading, but you find yourself serving. You see yourself blessed, but you find yourself struggling. You see yourself victorious, but you find yourself fighting battle after battle. And if you are not careful, you will start to believe that what you are going through is a contradiction to what God has promised. But I want to tell you today, it is not a contradiction. It is confirmation. God does not prepare you in public. He prepares you in private. He does not elevate you without first humbling you. And for many of you, this season of breaking is not a punishment. It is a setup. It is the foundation upon which God will build the next chapter of your life. Because if you cannot endure the preparation, you will not be able to handle the promotion. When God is preparing you for something great, he will also test your patience. Because there is no greatness without waiting. We live in a world that thrives on instant results. People want success overnight. They want to skip the process and go straight to the promise. But anything that comes too fast and too easy will not last. Every great person in the Bible had to wait. Abraham waited for the promise of a son. Moses waited before leading Israel to freedom. David was anointed king, but he had to wait years before he sat on the throne. Even Jesus, the Son of God, waited 30 years before stepping into his ministry. If they had to wait, what makes us think we will not? Waiting is not wasted time. Waiting is where God builds character. It is where he develops faith. It is where he removes pride and teaches you to trust him. Because if you do not learn how to trust God in the waiting, you will not be able to trust him with the blessing. And in the waiting, God will also test your obedience, because obedience is the key to promotion. Many people want the blessing, but they do not want the process. They want the reward, but they do not want the discipline. But let me tell you, obedience in the small things is what qualifies you for the big things. If God tells you to move, move. If he tells you to let go, let go. If he tells you to wait, wait. Because every act of obedience is positioning you for something greater. Another sign that God is preparing you for something great is that he will remove distractions. There are things in your life right now that are keeping you from walking in your destiny. And when God begins to move, he will strip away everything that is not aligned with his purpose for you. Sometimes he will take away relationships. Sometimes he will close doors. Sometimes he will allow certain things to fail, not because he is punishing you, but because he is protecting you. And I know it is hard. I know it hurts. But hear me. What God removes, he replaces with better. What he takes away, he restores in abundance. But you have to be willing to let go. Some of you are holding on to things that God has been trying to remove for years. You are clinging to relationships that are draining you. You are holding on to environments that are keeping you stuck. And God is saying, I have something greater for you, but you cannot receive it if your hands are full of the past. When God prepares you, he also separates you. Some of you have been feeling isolated. You have been feeling alone, misunderstood, disconnected from the very things you once enjoyed. That is not a coincidence. That is divine separation. Because God cannot elevate you while you are still attached to what is beneath you. And let me tell you, not everyone will understand your journey. Not everyone will celebrate your growth. Some people will try to pull you back to where you used to be. But when God calls you higher, you cannot bring everyone with you. Some people are not meant to go where you are going. Some friendships were only for a season. Some relationships were only to teach you a lesson. Let them go. And as you step into this next season, expect resistance. The enemy will not sit back and let you walk into your destiny without a fight. The moment you decide to grow, to change, to pursue the calling on your life, you will face opposition. But do not be discouraged, because the attacks are confirmation that you are on the right path. If the enemy is fighting you, it is because he sees what is ahead. He knows that if you ever step into who you are created to be, nothing will be able to stop you. This is not the time to give up. This is not the time to turn back. You are too close. Everything you have gone through, every tear, every disappointment, every closed door, it was all leading to this moment. God has been preparing you, shaping you, molding you. And when the time is right, He will open the doors that no man can shut. He will bring the right people into your life. He will align every detail in ways you never expected. But you have to stay the course. You have to trust the process. Because what God is preparing for you is far greater than anything you have ever imagined. The waiting will be worth it. The struggle will make sense. The pain will turn into purpose. And when you finally step into what God has been preparing for you, you will look back and realize that every hardship, every trial, every delay was necessary. So keep pressing forward, keep believing, keep expecting, because God is not just preparing something great, He is preparing you for something greater. And when the time comes, you will be ready. There is a reason you have been feeling unsettled. There is a reason why the things that used to bring you comfort no longer satisfy you. There is a reason why you cannot stay where you are. God is preparing something great for you, and in this season He is requiring you to grow. Growth is not comfortable. It stretches you, it challenges you, and sometimes it will even break you. But what God is birthing in you cannot come forth unless you are willing to endure the process. Some of you are asking God for more, but you are not yet prepared for what you are asking for. You want the blessing, but are you ready for the responsibility? You want the promotion, but have you developed the character to sustain it? You want the influence, but do you have the discipline to handle it? God does not just give, He prepares, He strengthens, He refines, He matures. Because if He gives it to you too soon, it will destroy you instead of bless you. Look at the process of refining gold. Gold in its raw form is not pure. It has impurities, things that need to be burned away. And the only way to purify it is to put it through intense heat. The fire is not there to destroy it, the fire is there to refine it. Some of you are in the fire right now. You are wondering why everything seems to be falling apart. You are wondering why you are facing so many trials at once. But God is saying, I am refining you. I am burning away everything that cannot go with you into the next season. You cannot carry old habits into a new season. You cannot bring small thinking into a big destiny. You cannot have a weak foundation and expect to sustain a great blessing. The refining is necessary, because what God is about to do in your life requires a version of you that is stronger, wiser, and more disciplined than ever before. Some of you have been praying for breakthrough, but before breakthrough comes breaking. Before the increase there is pruning. Before the blessing there is testing. And when God is preparing you, He will not allow you to take shortcuts. There are no shortcuts to greatness. There are no shortcuts to destiny. You must be willing to go through the process. And in the process, you may feel forgotten. You may feel like everyone else is moving forward while you are stuck. You may feel like your prayers are going unanswered, but God is never late. His timing is perfect, and when the moment is right, He will release you into the very thing He has been preparing you for. But until then, He is watching how you handle the process. Will you remain faithful when you do not see results? Will you continue to believe when everything in your life says otherwise? Look at David. He was anointed to be king, but after the anointing, he went back to the field. He did not sit on the throne the next day. He went through years of waiting, years of battles, years of being misunderstood. But in the waiting, he was being developed. He was learning to lead. He was being prepared for what was ahead. Some of you are in that waiting season, but do not despise it. What looks like delay is actually development. God is preparing you even when you cannot see it. And when God prepares you, He will test your heart. He will see if you are ready. He will place you in situations where your character is tested. Will you remain humble? Will you be obedient? Will you trust Him even when things do not go the way you expected? Because before God releases you into something great, He will make sure you are ready for it. If you are feeling isolated, do not be discouraged. Some of the greatest transformations happen in isolation. Look at Moses. Before leading the Israelites, he spent years in the wilderness. Look at Joseph. Before becoming a ruler, he was thrown into prison. Look at Jesus. Before stepping into ministry, he spent time alone in the wilderness. God separates before He elevates. He takes you away from distractions so that you can hear His voice more clearly. Some of you are fighting against the very isolation that God is using to prepare you. But embrace it, because in the quiet place, He is equipping you for what is coming. And when the time comes, everything will fall into place. The doors that were closed will suddenly open. The people who walked away will be replaced with those who are meant to walk with you. The opportunities that once seemed impossible will become available. But you have to trust the process. You have to trust that everything you have been through was necessary. Every tear, every disappointment, every setback, it was all working together to prepare you for the greatness ahead. Do not give up. Do not lose hope. You are not being overlooked. You are not being forgotten. You are being positioned. And when God moves, He moves suddenly. One day Joseph was in prison. The next he was in the palace. One day David was a shepherd. The next he was a king. One day Esther was just an orphan. The next she was a queen. Do not underestimate what God can do in just one moment. But you have to be ready. You have to be positioned. You have to be willing to endure the process. And so I encourage you today, do not resist what God is doing in your life. Do not fight against the preparation. Trust Him. Trust that He knows what He is doing. Trust that He is working behind the scenes even when you cannot see it. Trust that what He is preparing for you is greater than anything you could ever imagine. And when the time is right, you will step into everything He has promised. You will walk in the purpose He has ordained. And you will see that every struggle, every challenge, every moment of waiting was all leading you to something greater. When God is preparing something great for you, He does not ask for your permission. He does not wait until you are comfortable. He does not consult with your emotions. Instead, He begins to move in ways that may seem confusing at first. You may find yourself in situations where nothing makes sense. The people you thought would always be there begin to drift away. The plans you were so sure of begin to fall apart. The things you depended on for stability start to shake. And in those moments, you may wonder if you're doing something wrong. But I want to tell you today, this is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of divine alignment. God will disturb what you have settled for to prepare you for what He has promised. Some of you have been holding on to things that were only meant for a season, and now God is shaking them loose. He is making sure that nothing remains in your life that could hinder you from stepping into what He has for you. And yes, it may hurt. Yes, it may feel like loss. Yes, it may seem like everything is falling apart. But if you could only see what He is setting up for you, you would not be crying over what you lost. You would be rejoicing over what is coming. God's preparation often comes in the form of disruption. He will interrupt your plans. He will close doors you were ready to walk through. He will allow things to end that you thought would last forever. But do not be discouraged. What looks like rejection is often protection. What seems like a dead end is actually divine redirection. God is not punishing you. He is positioning you. Because when He prepares you for something great, He does not just change your circumstances. He changes you. Some of you have been asking God to take you to the next level, and He is answering that prayer by stretching you. He is making you uncomfortable where you are because He does not want you to settle. The problem with comfort is that it keeps you from growing. It makes you complacent. It makes you settle for less than what God intended. So He will begin to stir something within you. What used to satisfy you no longer does. What used to feel normal now feels restrictive. That is God awakening something inside of you, letting you know that you were created for more. And in the process of preparation, there will be moments of waiting. Waiting is one of the hardest parts of the journey because it requires trust. It requires patience. It requires faith. Many people miss their blessing because they grow weary in the waiting. They get tired. They get discouraged. They start to doubt if God really spoke to them. But let me remind you, just because it is delayed does not mean it is denied. Just because you have not seen it yet does not mean it is not coming. Look at Noah. God told him to build an ark, but it did not rain right away. He had to wait. Look at Abraham. God promised him a son, but he had to wait. Look at Hannah. She cried out to God for a child, but she had to wait. Look at Jesus. He knew his purpose, but he waited for the appointed time. If they had to wait, what makes you think you will not? The wait is not a waste, it is preparation. God is teaching you how to trust him. He is teaching you how to depend on him. Because if you cannot trust him in the waiting, how will you trust him with the blessing? Another sign that God is preparing something great for you is that he will test your endurance. There will be moments when you feel like giving up. Moments when it seems like the process is too hard. Moments when you wonder if it is even worth it. But hear me, greatness requires perseverance. You cannot quit every time things get difficult. You cannot walk away every time you face opposition. The enemy will try to wear you down. He will try to discourage you. He will try to make you doubt what God has spoken. But you have to stand firm. You have to keep believing, even when everything around you is telling you to give up. And in this season, you may feel alone. You may feel like no one understands what you are going through. But let me remind you, when God is preparing you, he often isolates you. He pulls you away from certain people. He removes distractions. He creates space for you to hear his voice more clearly. Because in the quiet, he can reveal things to you that you would not hear in the noise. Some of you are fighting against the isolation, but embrace it. God is doing something in the secret place that will be revealed in the right time. God will also refine your character, because your talent can take you to a place that your character cannot sustain. Your anointing can open doors, but it is your integrity that will keep you there. Some of you are going through situations right now that are testing your patience, your humility, your faithfulness. That is not by accident, it is by design. God is making sure that when he blesses you, you will not forget who you are. He is making sure that you will not become prideful, that you will not compromise, that you will not lose sight of him. And in the midst of it all, God will increase your hunger. You will begin to desire more of him. You will start craving deeper wisdom, deeper revelation. You will feel a pull to pray more, to seek him more, to grow spiritually. That is a sign that he is preparing you. Because before he elevates you, he fills you. He pours into you so that when you step into your next season, you will not be empty. But you must be willing to endure. You must be willing to trust him when you cannot see the full picture. You must be willing to walk by faith even when the path is unclear. Because when the time comes, everything will fall into place. The doors that once seemed closed will open effortlessly. The connections you need will come at the right moment. The opportunities that seemed impossible will become reality. But you have to be ready. You have to be positioned. You have to trust that God knows what he is doing. So I urge you, do not grow weary. Do not let discouragement steal your faith. Do not allow fear to stop you from moving forward, because you are on the verge of something great. You may not see it yet, but it is coming. And when it arrives, you will look back and realize that every struggle, every delay, every setback was all leading to this moment. God is not just preparing something great for you, he is preparing you for something great. And when the time is right, you will step into everything he has ordained for your life. The waiting will be worth it. The trials will make sense. The process will have purpose. And you will walk in the fullness of what he has destined for you. Above all, trust the process. Trust that every challenge, every delay, and every moment of uncertainty is working together for your good. What may seem like chaos is actually divine order. What may feel like loss is actually preparation for something greater. God does not make mistakes. He is intentional in everything he does. If he is allowing you to go through this season, it is because he knows the greatness he has placed inside of you. So do not give up. Do not lose hope. Do not let fear, doubt, or impatience rob you of what God is preparing. Stand firm in faith, knowing that what he has promised, he will fulfill. The doors will open, the breakthrough will come, and you will step into the fullness of your destiny. And when you do, you will look back and see that every trial, every setback, and every moment of waiting was necessary. Because what God has for you is greater than anything you could have ever imagined. Keep pressing forward. Your season of greatness is near.